And finally, contestant number 3's been the second choice in Cincinnati, but he's ready to be someone's number 1 and one and only RC, who is the perfect match for Tee Higgins.
This may come as a surprise, but I'm going to say the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels. And look, it's Valentine's Day, and everybody wants to be the one. But football is different. It's okay to be a QB or a wide receiver polygamist. And with a guy like Tee Higgins, he's already been a brother wide receiver along with Jamar Chase. So bring him over with Tee Higgins. Yes, he won't get all 7 days, but he may get 4. And on that special night, when he's the number 1, he'll get to shine and be on the arms of the great Jaden Daniels.
Ooh, okay. We see that potential love connection. And I'm done with this. There's no doubt that the Bengals have had more success when Tee Higgins is available. I've peaked in my career, guys. This was it. Bengals went 8-4 when Higgins played last season compared to 1-4 when he didn't. They averaged more points per game, and Joe Burrow averaged 23 more yards per game. And interestingly enough, Jamar Chase loved it when Tee was there. Look at the numbers. Because, of course, the focus of the defense, not just on number 1, it was help there on the other side. So, Graz, we heard Joe Burrow, and let me tell you, if a mic was hot, Joe Burrow was talking all last week on Radio Row, explaining the situation, and he made it sound so easy and simple about, hey, how do we keep the family together here? Is it that simple?
Well, no, obviously, no, it's not that simple, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, what is Joe Burrow actually talking about in terms of his willingness to work with his own contract? Is he willing to give back money the way Aaron Rodgers did when he got to the Jets? Or is he just talking about kicking the can down the road in terms of cash and cap? So that has yet to be answered. But regardless of that, the biggest obstacle the Cincinnati Bengals face in signing any free agent ever is their preferred contract structure. They insist on a contract structure that they do not guarantee any money beyond the first year. They made an exception for Joe Burrow. If Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson insist on second-year guarantees, then the Bengals are either going to have to change the way they've always done business, or they're going to have to say goodbye to those guys. So it's tricky right now. We don't know exactly what will happen with Jamar Chase and his extension. Tee Higgins can be franchised again. It would cost about $26 million. Not ridiculous, but also maybe not something they want to do in light of all their other needs. So no, Kevin, not that simple. Bengals are in for a tricky offseason.
Well, first I'll say I love Joe Burrow putting pressure on the franchise to rethink the way they structure contracts, as Dan talked about. He brought up the example of the Philadelphia Eagles, who seem to be able to afford everyone in large part because they put a lot of cash up front, big signing bonuses, particularly with some of these guys that they've signed on offense. That's great. And I do think if the Bengals did that, they could retain more of their free agents. The problem for them, though, is unlike the Philadelphia Eagles, they have drafted extremely poorly on defense. This is part of the reason why the Eagles are able to spend so much on offense, is that they hit on so many picks on defense. The Bengals, unfortunately, have not. And then the other issue with Higgins in particular, RC can speak to this as well, he is so far and away the gem of free agency, the receiver that many teams will want, that even if they restructure Burrow's contract and give big signing bonuses and could afford him, they might still get priced out because he's in so much demand and other teams are willing to break the bank. So it's not impossible, but I do think it would be difficult.
Mina, that's exactly what I talked about yesterday, is that you can have these heavy contracts offensively when you're Philadelphia because of the young talent on the defensive side of the ball that you've had yet to pay. They don't have that in Cincinnati. Also, with Al Golden now becoming the defensive coordinator, you're going to try to find ways to make this defense better. And maybe this is an opportunity where you go to Joe Burrow and you say, look, you had an historic season. We watched Jamar and Tee Higgins dominate, but we still didn't didn't make it to the playoffs because we couldn't get stops. And so now you're going to have to earn that contract. You're going to have to show us that you're worth it without having a 1A and a 1B wide receiver. And to the other point that Mina made is this. Yes, you can sign A.J. Brown and you can sign Devontae Smith because you're talking about a guy who's the third highest paid wide receiver in A.J. Brown and someone who is farther down the list in Devontae Smith. With Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins, you could possibly be talking about the number 1 paid wide receiver by a large amount in Chase and the number 2 or 3 guy in Tee Higgins.
Yeah, and no matter how many points you put up, you still got to stop somebody. Keep in mind the Bengals had 4 losses this season when they scored 30 points or more. Tie for the most in NFL history. Keep in mind, if they would have made the playoffs, that MVP could have been Joe Burrow because that defense let him down each and every single week. Jets breakup didn't feature an ugly divorce, but no one was sending chocolate-covered mushrooms to anyone. With a new head coach and new GM, the team is going in a new direction as they officially parted ways with the 41-year-old future Hall of Famer. So after tearing his Achilles 4 snaps into his first season in New York, Rodgers really struggled in his first full year with the Jets, but his poor play goes back to his final season here with the Packers, where he put up the worst total QBR of his career and tied his career high for turnovers. You know, last season, Rodgers ranked bottom 10 in both total QBR and yards per attempt. Back here with Mina, RC, and Graz. Mina, looking forward here for the Jets. What's next for them and their plans if they have to rebuild this roster going forward?
Yeah, there are needs on both sides of the ball. I think Ryan's going to talk about the defense, so I'll focus on the offense for a second. Aaron Glenn and their new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, come from the Lions, where they built an environment for the quarterback, Jared Goff, to flourish, starting with, of course, that offensive line in the run game. I think the Jets need to do the same. Right tackle jumps out. The other thing, and it sounds really specific, but it's really important, they need a tight end who can block. And to that end, I'm telling you, Tyler Warren from Penn State, 7 might be a little bit rich, but this kid can do everything. He is about as complete a tight end as we have seen in recent years, and I know that's high praise considering Brock Bowers was just drafted, but I would love his fit in terms of sort of reestablishing the identity for this offense. So just focusing on protection, blocking, run game, I think, and then you worry about the quarterback, maybe not even this season.
Man, I know this is not supposed to be my job right now, but Tyler Warren is an absolute stud. I get it. We watched Brock Bowers in year 1 and what he was able to do. I would actually think or feel that Tyler Warren is more versatile than Brock Bowers was. And maybe it's because of the way Penn State used him, but I got to see it in person against Notre Dame, and he was absolutely sensational. I mean, fantastic in so many ways. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we watched this team take a step back. Obviously, Jermaine Johnson was out for the season. The Hassan Reddick trade was an absolute bust, but we watched Will McDonald take a step up as a rusher. We saw Jamie Sherwood fill in for C.J. Mosley and become a player, but let's think about what they are at the safety position. I feel like for 2 or 3 years, they've been trying to get better at that position. Played a lot last year with Jalen Mills. Sauce Gardner wasn't as good as we'd seen him in the first 2 years. Can Aaron Glenn get him to play at a higher level? And what are you going to do with DJ Reed on the other side? Also, you need to find a way to be able to create a 4-man rush. Does Jermaine Johnson coming back do that? Or how do you add that through the draft or maybe free agency? I feel like there are so many holes on this defense, but for me, I go with what Mina said. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball, being able to produce through physicality and get into the play action game, and maybe Aaron Glenn can be that next step up defensively to get them back to playing high-level ball.
Yeah.
And the move they made this week with Aaron Rodgers is the first step in figuring out quarterback. To Mina's point, that doesn't mean they have to go draft one this year if they don't like any of them. They have to figure out what the plan is. Does that mean Tyrod Taylor is a bridge quarterback for this year until they figure out who the long-term answer is? It's going to have to be a long-term solution at quarterback, a young player on a rookie contract most likely, because you look at the Jets, they have drafted well. They have extensions coming for guys like Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson and possibly, Breece Hall and all these guys. So their roster, as you budget it out over the next couple of years, gets a little more complicated, a little more expensive. They're going to have to find what everyone's looking for, that bargain quarterback for the next few years.
Yeah, to your point, they have drafted well outside the quarterback position. That's the one thing that has hurt them, especially over the last decade.